The kitchen light was still on. Miriam had not meant to leave it on. She never did. Not anymore. After Harold passed, she had gotten careful about small things. Turning off lights, locking doors twice, checking the stove before bed, even when she had not cooked. These small rituals gave her the illusion of control over a life that had stopped feeling like hers 14 months ago. But tonight the light was on, and she was sitting at the kitchen table, and she did not know how long she had been there. The coffee in her cup had gone cold. She had not taken a single sip. In front of her on the table was a book, old, worn at the corners. The cover soft from decades of being held. She had not planned to take it out tonight. She had not planned anything tonight. She simply found herself standing at the shelf where it had sat untouched for 14 months. And then she found herself walking back to the table with it in her hands. And then she was sitting here, staring at it, unable to open it and unable to put it away. The house was quiet in the way that only old houses get quiet. Not peaceful, just empty. The kind of quiet that has weight. Outside, a car passed slowly down the street. Its headlights moved across the kitchen wall and disappeared. Miriam watched the light come and go and felt nothing in particular, which had become her most common feeling over the past year and 2 months. Not sadness exactly, not numbness exactly. Something in between that she had never found the right word for. She was 67 years old, and she was sitting alone in a kitchen that smelled faintly of something she had cooked 3 days ago, and she was staring at a Bible she could not bring herself to open. This was her life now. She thought about Harold, the way she always did when the house got this quiet. Not in a dramatic way, just the ordinary thoughts. The way he used to leave his reading glasses on the counter by the coffee maker every single morning for 41 years. And how she used to move them every single morning without thinking. And how she would give almost anything now to have something in the wrong place. Something that proved another person had been here. Something small and careless and alive. She missed the mess of him. She missed the noise of him. She missed the way he used to pray before bed, out loud, in that low voice of his that always made her feel like everything was going to be all right, even when she knew it might not be. She had not prayed since the night he died. That was the part she never said out loud. Not to her son Thomas, who called every Sunday at 2 in the afternoon like clockwork. Not to the women at the church she had stopped attending. Not to anyone, because saying it out loud would require explaining it. And she was not sure she could explain something she barely understood herself. She had not stopped believing. That was the thing people would assume if they knew, and they would be wrong. She had not stopped believing in God the way you stop believing in something that turns out not to be real. It was nothing like that. It was more like this. The last real prayer she had ever prayed was the night Harold was in the hospital. Not the quiet bedtime prayers she had said for 40 years without thinking. Not the grace before meals or the soft thank yous before sleep. This was different. This was her on her knees on a cold hospital floor in a family waiting room with plastic chairs and fluorescent lighting, asking for more time, asking with everything she had, asking the way she had not asked for anything in years because she had always trusted that what was given was enough. She asked for more time. And Harold was gone by morning. She did not blame God. She wanted to be clear about that, even in her own mind. She did not shake her fist at the sky, or demand answers, or fall apart in the way people sometimes did in grief. She was not that kind of woman. She had buried her mother. She had buried her mother-in-law. She understood that death came and that faith was supposed to carry you through it. But something had happened in that waiting room. Something had gone quiet inside her that had never gone quiet before. Not anger, not doubt, just a silence. A deep internal silence where something else used to be. And the silence had stayed, and she had not known how to pray into it. She had not known what words to put into that kind of emptiness. So she had stopped. And the weeks became months, and the silence inside her, and the silence in this house became the same silence. And she had learned to live inside it the way you learn to live inside anything that you cannot change. She looked down at the book on the table. The cover was navy blue, faded nearly to gray at the spine. Harold had given it to her the year they were married. He had written something on the inside page in his careful handwriting. She had not looked at it since Harold died. She did not open it now either. She just sat with her hands flat on the table on either side of it and breathed. And then something shifted. Not a sound. Not a voice she heard with her ears exactly. More like something that was already in the room becoming present in a way it had not been a moment ago. The way a candle flame suddenly holds still after flickering. The way the air changes before rain. And what came was not comfort. What came first was a kind of knowing. You took that book out tonight. Not by accident. Miriam sat very still. She was not the kind of woman who heard voices. She was not the kind of woman who claimed visions or special messages or divine interruptions in the middle of Tuesday evenings. She had been a Sunday school teacher for 20 years, and she believed in a God who was real and present. But she had always been quietly skeptical of people who spoke about hearing from him the way they described a phone call. But this was not a phone call. It was more like remembering something she had always known but had not thought about in a very long time. Like the answer to a question surfacing before the question was fully asked. She had taken the book out tonight. Her hands had known where it was on the shelf without her thinking about it. Her feet had carried her there and back. Something in her had reached for it before her mind had caught up with what she was doing. She had not opened it, but she had reached for it. She had crossed the room and put it on the table in front of her. And that was something. That was more than she had done in 14 months. And sitting there in the yellow kitchen light with the cold coffee and the quiet house around her, Miriam felt the first crack in something she had been holding shut for a very long time. It was not healing. She knew the difference. It was not peace, not yet. It was something smaller than either of those things, and far more fragile. It was the possibility of a door. I know what that night cost you. The words moved through her, like warm water moving through cold. Not dramatic, not loud. Gentle in the way that only things that are completely certain of themselves can be gentle. I know what you asked for. I know what you said on that floor. I heard every word. Miriam's hands pressed flat against the table. She had told herself for 14 months that God had not heard. Not because she believed he was not there, but because it was easier somehow to believe he had not heard than to believe he had heard and chosen otherwise. One of those possibilities left room for a mistake. The other left no room for anything but acceptance of a choice she did not understand. But now the words came and they did not offer explanation. They offered something she had not expected. I heard every word. Not I had a reason. Not it was part of a plan. Not someday you will understand. Just this, the acknowledgement itself. The simple, complete, unchallengeable fact that on that cold floor in that waiting room, she had not been speaking into nothing. She had been heard. But something in her chest loosened by a fraction. Not much, just enough to breathe slightly differently than she had been breathing for a very long time. She looked at the book. She thought about all the mornings she had sat at this same table and talked out loud to herself while the coffee brewed. Little complaints, little observations. The bird that came to the feeder Harold had built in 2009, and that she kept filling because she could not bring herself to take it down. the ache in her right knee that was worse in cold weather, the phone call from Thomas that she always felt both relieved and emptied by. Small things, daily things. The texture of a life continuing whether she was particularly engaged in it or not. She had said, out loud, on more mornings than she could count, "I do not know what I am doing anymore." She had not thought of it as prayer. She had thought of it as something between habit and helplessness, the sound a person makes when there is no one in the room. But what if someone had been in the room? What if all of those mornings, all of those small and unpolished and unchurched and unreligious murmurings over a coffee maker had been received, had been counted, had been gathered up by something that did not require the right words or the right posture or the right level of faith? What if she had never actually stopped talking? She had just stopped calling it prayer. The thought sat with her quietly. It did not ask her to do anything with it. It did not demand she feel a certain way or respond in a certain way. It was just there, offered. And she was free to look at it or not. She looked at it. Outside the window, the neighborhood was dark and still. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked twice and went quiet. The refrigerator hummed its familiar hum. The kitchen clock said it was 11:43, which was later than she usually stayed up, though staying up late had become less unusual in the past year than it had ever been before. Sleep was another thing that had changed. She thought about the word silence. She had been calling what happened inside her after Harold died a silence, a falling quiet of something that used to be there. And for 14 months, she had interpreted that silence as distance, as the space between herself and something that had once felt close. But what if it was not distance? What if it was something else entirely? What if the silence she had been sitting inside for 14 months was not empty at all? What if it had been the kind of silence that waits, patient and deliberate, and full of something she had not been still enough, or ready enough, or willing enough to notice? She had been filling the silence with motion, with routine, with the performance of being fine. Because being fine was what she knew how to be. And because Thomas did not need to worry. And because the women at the church who kept inviting her back did not need to know how far she had actually drifted. She had been managing the silence, and the silence had been waiting. She put one hand on the cover of the book, did not open it, just rested her palm against the worn fabric of it. She could feel faintly the shape of the cross embossed beneath her hand. She had touched this cover so many times over so many decades that her hands knew the texture of it the way they knew the texture of her own face. The book was not unfamiliar. Nothing about it was unfamiliar. She was the one who had become a stranger to it and to herself, and to the version of her life that had made sense when Harold was in it. And yet here she was, sitting at the table with her hand on the book, in a kitchen with the light still on at 11:43 on an ordinary Tuesday. You did not take it out to read it tonight. You took it out because your hands remembered what it felt like to hold it. She breathed. That was enough. That was all. Just a breath that went slightly deeper than the last one. She did not open the book, but she did not put it away either. And in the space between those two things, in the small and unremarkable and completely ordinary space of a woman sitting alone in a kitchen with her hand on a book she was not yet ready to open, something had already begun. She did not know it yet, but the light was still on, and that was not nothing. That was, in fact, everything. The clock moved to midnight, and Miriam did not notice. She was still at the table, still in the same chair, the cold coffee still in the cup she had never lifted, the book still under her hand, the kitchen light still burning the way it always burned, steady and indifferent, the way light is when it does not know what it is illuminating. She had been sitting for a long time with a thought she could not quite finish. It had started simply enough. The idea that her morning murmurings over the coffee maker might have been something more than talking to herself. The possibility that words spoken into an apparently empty room were not, in fact, disappearing. It was a small thought, a fragile one. The kind that could be dismissed easily if she chose to dismiss it. She had not dismissed it. She was turning it over instead, slowly. The way you turn over something you found on the ground that might be ordinary and might be something else entirely, and you are not yet sure which. Her mother used to say that God speaks in the register we are willing to hear. Miriam had taught that to children in Sunday school for 2 decades. She had written it on a chalkboard. She had said it to parents who came to her confused about why their faith felt quiet and distant. She had believed it completely. The way you believe things that have never been tested by anything that costs you significantly. And then the test came, and she had not recognized the voice because she had been listening for something louder. She had been waiting for an answer that sounded like an answer. Something clear, something that made the 14 months make sense. Something that arrived in a form she could point to and say, "There, that is what he said. That is what it meant. That is why it happened this way and not another way." That answer had not come, but something else had been coming quietly. In the register she had stopped paying attention to. She thought about the morning in February. It was 4 months after Harold died. She had been in the bathroom, moving too quickly, the way she sometimes did when she was trying to outrun her own thoughts, and she had slipped on the bath mat. Not a dramatic fall, just a sudden loss of balance. The kind that happens and then is over in a second. But she had caught herself on the edge of the sink with both hands and stood there for a long moment, heart going fast. And what had come to her in that moment was not fear. It was a voice, her own voice, or not her own voice. She could not entirely say, but it said, simply, "Not yet." She had stood in the bathroom for a long time after that, breathing, "Not yet." She had told herself it was just the adrenaline talking, the brain producing comfort chemicals in response to a small fright. She had a rational explanation ready, and she had used it because the alternative was to sit with what the words actually implied. Not yet meant there was a yet. Not yet meant something was still coming. She had not been ready to believe that in February. She had filed it away under things she could not deal with right now and kept moving. The way she had learned to keep moving, because motion was the only thing that reliably got her through the days. But now, sitting at this table, she thought about those 2 words differently. What if that had not been adrenaline? What if that had been the same voice that was speaking to her now? Just in a different form, just in the only form she could have received it that morning in the bathroom. Off balance, heart pounding. Not ready for anything longer or more complicated than 2 words. Not yet. 2 words, small enough to slip past her defenses, true enough to stay with her for months, even when she refused to examine them. She pressed her hand a little more firmly against the book. There was the evening in May. Thomas had called on a Sunday, as he always did, but he had called early that week. Not Sunday. Thursday, which had never happened before. She remembered being surprised by it. She remembered his voice sounding uncertain, which was also unusual, because Thomas was a man who arranged his uncertainty into categories and dealt with them methodically and rarely let it show. He had said, "I do not know why I am calling today, Mom. I just wanted to hear your voice. That was all." They had talked for 20 minutes about nothing important. The weather where he lived, the garden she was not tending the way she used to, a television program she had watched twice and could not explain why. Small, ordinary things. And after she hung up, she had stood in the hallway for a moment, feeling something she could not name. Less alone. That was the closest she could get to it. She had thought it was Thomas. She had been grateful to him for it. In the abstract way, she was grateful for things now. A little muted, a little far away. But Thursday, he had never called on a Thursday before or since. She had never asked him why that particular evening. What had made him pick up the phone outside of his established pattern? She thought about it now. What if it was not Thomas who decided to call on a Thursday evening in May? What if something had moved in him? Some quiet nudge that he would not have been able to explain and probably did not try to explain because men like Thomas did not spend much time examining their impulses. He had felt like calling, so he had called. And she had stood in her hallway feeling less alone. I was in that phone call, Miriam. She was very still. I was not absent from your May. I was not distant from your February. The moments you called coincidence were not coincidences. I do not work only in the ways you expect me to work. I was in the bathroom with you in February. I was in Thomas picking up the phone on a Thursday without knowing why. I am not absent from the ordinary. The ordinary is where you actually live. She had spent all those months measuring God's presence by the standard of the extraordinary, by whether the grief lifted, by whether a sign appeared, by whether something happened that could not be explained any other way. And because the grief had not lifted and the sign had not appeared, and the days had continued in their ordinary painful way, she had concluded that she was alone in them. She had been measuring wrong. She sat with that for a long time. The refrigerator clicked and hummed. Somewhere in the wall, a pipe settled. The house made its old sounds around her, and she heard them differently than she had heard them 10 minutes ago. Not emptiness. Just quiet. Not absence. Just the ordinary nighttime of a life that was still. In fact, being lived. She thought about what she was actually afraid of. This was the question she had been avoiding for 14 months, and she felt it now, rising up with a clarity that surprised her, because she had thought her fear was grief and loneliness, which were real things, true things, things she did not minimize. But underneath those things, below them, heavier and older than both of them, was something else. She was afraid that the rest of her life meant nothing. Not in a dark or desperate way, not the way that would have alarmed Thomas or the women at church. More in the way of a quiet mathematical conclusion she had arrived at, without fully realizing she was doing the math. She had been a wife. That chapter was closed. She had raised her children. That chapter was closed. She had taught Sunday school and organized the Christmas pageant and made casseroles for families going through hard times, and all of those things had mattered, and all of those things were also, in their way, behind her now. What remained? A year of mornings over a coffee maker. Sunday phone calls with Thomas that lasted 20 minutes and felt both too short and too long. All those mornings of filling the bird feeder Harold had built and watching through the window and feeling glad for the birds in a distant, sad way. The way she felt glad for most things now. At a slight remove from full gladness. This was 67. This was the remaining portion of a life well lived. This was what came after everything that gave the life its shape. She did not know what to do with it, and she had not known how to say that to anyone because it sounded ungrateful, and she was not ungrateful. She was grateful for Thomas, and for her health, and for the house, and for the bird feeder, and for every ordinary morning that continued to arrive. She was grateful in the way people are grateful when they know they are supposed to be. When they have faith that tells them gratitude is the correct orientation toward life. But underneath the gratitude was the question, what is this for now? She had asked it into empty rooms. She had asked it in the early hours of mornings that arrived too slowly. She had asked it without knowing she was asking, in the sighs she exhaled when she sat down, in the pauses before she turned off the television at night. What is this for now? That is the right question. The words moved through her, and she felt something tighten in her throat, because the voice did not answer the question immediately. And somehow, that was more reassuring than if it had. Because easy answers to real questions are not answers. They are replacements. And she had lived long enough to know the difference. You have been carrying that question for 14 months and calling it grief. Some of it is grief, but not all of it. What you are really asking is whether the story is over, whether the part of the life that mattered has already been lived and what remains is only remainder. She closed her eyes. I need you to hear me carefully now, Miriam. Not over, not remainder, not the end of something. You have been reading the wrong page and concluding the wrong thing. What feels like aftermath is not aftermath. What feels like epilogue is not epilogue. She opened her eyes. The kitchen looked the same as it always looked. Yellow light, old tile, the coffee cup, the book under her hand. Nothing had changed in the room at all. And yet she was aware of something being different in the way you become aware of a sound stopping. A sound you did not know you had been hearing until it was gone. And the absence of it is its own kind of noise. The tight thing in her chest that she had been living with for 14 months. The low constant pressure of it, the weight she had come to think of as permanent, the way you come to think of any discomfort that lasts long enough as simply the new condition of your body. It had shifted, not gone. She would not say gone. She was too honest for that. Too much a woman who had spent decades distinguishing between what was real and what she wanted to be real, because she had found that distinction worth keeping, but shifted, loosened by a fraction. One loop of a knot releasing. She thought about February again, the bathroom floor. Not yet. She thought about May again, Thomas calling on a Thursday and not knowing why. She thought about all the other mornings she could not specifically remember, but that had accumulated into 14 months of a life that had continued even when she was not sure she wanted it to. The bird at the feeder, the coffee that brewed, the body that woke up and moved through the house and ate and slept and woke again. All of that continuing. All of that, perhaps, held. She had not been abandoned in her silence. She had been accompanied in it. By something that worked in the small registers she had stopped paying attention to. By something that was not put off by her absence from church, or her inability to pray, or her long and complicated relationship with a faith that had been tested in a waiting room on a cold hospital floor and had not emerged from the testing unchanged. Faith that has not been tested is not faith. It is comfort. She had heard that somewhere, a long time ago. She was not sure where. What she had now, sitting at this table at nearly midnight with a cold cup of coffee and a book she had not opened, was not the comfortable faith of her easier years. That faith was gone, and she did not think it was coming back in the same form. But something else was here. Something that had survived the testing, something quieter and less certain and more honest than what she had before. And also, somehow, more real. She did not have a name for it yet. She was not sure she needed one tonight. Outside, the first suggestion of wind moved through the trees in the front yard. She could hear it faintly. A soft and irregular sound, the kind of sound that makes you aware of how still everything else has been. The kitchen light did not flicker. The house held itself around her steady and warm. She looked at the book. She thought about Harold's handwriting on the inside page. Careful and unhurried, the way he did everything. She had memorized what he wrote 39 years ago and had not needed to look at it for decades and could not bring herself to look at it now. But she knew what it said. He had written for Miriam, who already knows how to listen. She just sometimes forgets. She had laughed when she read it 39 years ago. She had thought it was sweet and a little presumptuous and entirely Harold. She had not thought about what it actually meant because she had not needed to yet. She was thinking about it now. Who already knows how to listen? She had stopped listening. Not to God, she had thought. Not to prayer, but she understood now, sitting here, that she had stopped listening to everything. To the quiet, to the ordinary, to the small moments that accumulated into a life. She had closed herself down to manage the pain, and in closing herself down, she had closed out more than pain. She had closed out the voice that spoke in low registers, the voice that was in the bathroom in February and in the phone call in May and in all the other moments she had labeled coincidence and filed away and refused to examine. I have not been silent. You have been protecting yourself from hearing me, she breathed. I understand why. I am not telling you this to correct you. I am telling you this so you can put the protection down. You do not need it the same way tonight. You are safe here. You have always been safe here. The clock on the wall showed 12:17. Miriam had not moved in over an hour, but something in her had moved considerably. She did not know yet what came next. She did not know what the rest of this night held, or what the morning would feel like, or whether this shift she felt in her chest would still be there when she woke up. She had learned in 14 months not to trust the feelings of any single moment too completely. Grief was inconsistent. Hope was inconsistent. Everything was inconsistent. But this did not feel like a feeling. It felt like something more structural than that. Like a wall that had been bearing weight finally being told it did not have to bear it alone. She sat in the kitchen with the light on at 12:17 and her hand on a book she was not yet ready to open. The house was quiet around her, but it was a different quiet than the one she had walked into tonight. She could not have explained the difference exactly. She only knew that something in the room had shifted and that the night was not finished with her yet. The clock said 12:31. Miriam had not moved from the chair. Her back should have ached by now. It usually did after sitting too long on the hard kitchen chairs that she had always meant to replace and never had because Harold liked them. And then because replacing them felt like erasing something. But tonight she did not feel the ache. Or if it was there, she was not attending to it. Her attention was somewhere else entirely. She was thinking about a word. The word was remaining. She had been using it for 14 months in a particular way. As in what remained. As in the remaining years. As in the remainder of a life, a mathematical term. A term for what is left over after the meaningful operation has already been performed. She had not chosen the word deliberately. It had simply settled into her thinking the way certain words do when they find a feeling that fits them and take up residence there. What remained? She saw now that the word had been doing damage she had not given it credit for. Because a remainder is by definition less than what came before. A remainder is what you are left holding after the real transaction is complete. If she was living in the remainder of her life, then the life itself was already essentially over. She was just the leftover portion, the part after the equals sign that nobody was particularly interested in. She had been thinking of herself that way for 14 months, and she had not known she was doing it. The voice did not rush in to correct her. It waited. It had been waiting all night, and it was in no hurry now. That patience was its own kind of message. She was worth waiting for. The conversation was worth having at the pace it needed to be had. Then it came. You have been calling yourself a remainder. I have never called you that. I do not have a word for you that means leftover or after or less than what came before. The word I have for you tonight is the same word I have always had. It is simply your name, Miriam, present tense, alive, here. She felt the words land somewhere below thought, below the place where she would have evaluated them or questioned them or turned them over looking for the catch. They went deeper than that, into the place where the real things live. The things that are true before you decide whether to believe them. She was here, present tense, alive. Here, not a remainder, not a leftover, not the quiet trailing end of something that had already finished. Here she looked at her hands on the table, the skin of them soft and mapped with the small lines of 67 years, the ring on her left hand that she had not taken off and was not going to take off. These were not the hands of someone whose story was finished. They were just hands. Her hands still capable of warmth, still capable of reaching. Still here on this table, in this kitchen, in this life, that was continuing whether she had made peace with it or not. She had not made peace with it. Not fully. Not yet. But she was beginning to understand that peace was not the same as answers. She had been waiting for answers before she allowed herself peace, and that was the order wrong. Peace did not come after understanding. Peace came before it. Peace was the condition in which understanding eventually became possible. She had spent 14 months waiting for God to explain himself, to give her something she could hold up to the loss and say, "There, that is why, that is what it was worth, that makes the equation balance." She had not asked for that explicitly. She was not sure she had even been conscious of waiting for it. But she saw it now. She had been standing at a door expecting it to open inward, pushing against it. And the door opened the other way. I am not going to explain that night to you. Not because I am withholding from you, but because the explanation you are looking for would not do what you think it would do. You believe that if you understood why, the space Harold left would feel different. It would not. The space would still be the same space. Understanding is not the same as healing, and I am more interested in your healing than in satisfying a question that would leave you exactly where you are. She had not expected that. She had expected, if she was honest, some version of comfort that included a reason. That was what she had seen in other people's grief. The searching for the reason, and the comfort that came when they found one or constructed one, or were given one by someone who loved them. It was for the best. He is in a better place. God needed him more than we did. She had said some of those things herself over the years to people in pain, and she had meant them kindly, and she understood now why they had sometimes not been enough. Because they were answers. And answers kept you in your head. What she needed was not in her head. I am not asking you to understand what happened, Miriam. I am asking you to trust what is happening. Those are different invitations. She let that sit. What is happening? She looked around the kitchen, the same tile, and the same hum of the refrigerator, and the same light, and yet she had the distinct sensation of seeing it differently than she had seen it when she sat down tonight. Not transformed, not miraculous, just seen. The way you see something properly when the light finally hits it at the right angle and what was familiar becomes also suddenly clear. This kitchen was hers. This house was hers. This life, continuing past the point she had imagined it would feel meaningful, was hers. She thought about the bird feeder. Harold had built it in the summer of 2009 from a kit their son had given him as a Father's Day gift. He had spent an entire Saturday afternoon on it, more time than the kit required, because Harold did not do things quickly when he could do them carefully. He had painted it white and hung it from the oak tree at the edge of the yard. And they had stood together at the kitchen window, watching it for the rest of that evening, waiting for the first bird, the way you wait for something you are unreasonably invested in. The first bird had been a chickadee. Harold had been disproportionately pleased about that. She had kept the feeder filled for 15 years, first as a shared thing, and then as her thing alone. And she had not once considered letting it go empty, because letting it go empty felt like the end of something she was not ready to end. The chickadees still came, the finches and the sparrows, and occasionally something more exotic that she could not identify and would have asked Harold about. She had kept filling the feeder. She had not thought of that as faith. She had thought of it as habit or sentiment, or the simple stubbornness of a woman who was not going to let something Harold built fall into disuse. But what if it was also something else? What if every morning she walked out to that feeder with a bag of seed she bought at the hardware store on Route 9? What if every one of those mornings was also a kind of continuing? A kind of yes to something, even when she was not sure what she was saying yes to. A small daily act of tending, of showing up, of doing the thing that needed doing, even in the absence of the person who had made the thing matter in the first place. She had been showing up for 14 months. She had not given herself credit for that. You have been showing up every morning, in the ways you were capable of. I have seen every one of those mornings, Miriam. Every cup of coffee, every bird, every Sunday phone call. You answered when what you wanted was to let it ring. Every morning you got up when getting up cost you more than it used to. I have seen all of it, and it was not nothing. None of it was nothing. You have been faithful in the ways available to you, even when faith felt entirely absent. She pressed her lips together. She was not going to cry. She had decided some time ago that she was done with crying. Not because she was healed, but because she was tired of it. Tired of the aftermath of it. The swollen eyes, and the headache, and the particular exhaustion that follows grief that has been wept. She was past the weeping stage. She was in some other stage that did not have a name yet. But her eyes were wet. She did not wipe them. She just sat with the wet in her eyes and looked at the table and breathed. The voice let her breathe. It did not rush forward. It did not offer the next thing before she had finished receiving the current thing. It simply waited the way it had been waiting all night, present and unhurried. The way only something that is entirely certain of its love can wait. Then it said what it had been moving toward all night. You are not here because your purpose is finished and you are waiting for the end. You are not here as a remainder or a leftover or the quiet closing chapter of something that already reached its peak. You are here because I am not finished, not with what I want to give you, not with what I want to do through you, not with who I want you to become in the years ahead. She heard the words years ahead and something moved in her chest. Not the knot loosening another loop, something different. Something that felt more like a window opening than a door unlocking. A change in the air, the possibility of more light. Years ahead. She had stopped thinking in those terms. She had stopped imagining forward the way she used to, the way she and Harold used to sit at this very table and talk about what they would do when they retired and where they might travel, and what the grandchildren, if there were grandchildren, might be like. Forward thinking had been a shared activity, and when Harold left, he took her relationship to the future with him. She had been living entirely in the present tense of grief, which is to say, a kind of suspended state that is neither fully present, nor future, nor past, but simply the endless now of loss. Years ahead, the words opened something. She did not know what the years held. She was not being given a vision, or a plan, or a detailed itinerary of what came next. She understood that. She was not asking for that, but the simple fact that the words years ahead could be spoken over her life without irony, without the faint tragic quality she had begun to attach to her own future. That was something. That was more than she had walked into this kitchen with tonight. I am not going to tell you that the loneliness ends tomorrow. I am not going to tell you the mornings become easy, or that the chair across the table fills with someone new, or that the ache you carry when the house goes quiet at night will simply stop. I do not offer you easy comfort. I offer you true comfort. And true comfort says this: you are not alone in any of it. Not in the missing, not in the questions, not in the mornings that cost you. I am in all of it with you. Not watching from a distance, not waiting for you to feel better before I draw close. I am here in the hard version of your life. This version, right now, in this kitchen at this hour. She put both hands flat on the book, not opening it. Not yet, but holding it differently than she had been holding it. Not like something she was not ready for, like something that was hers. Because it was hers. 39 years ago, Harold had written something inside the front cover, and the thing he had written was still true. She already knew how to listen. She had just stopped. She had closed herself down to manage the unsurvivable and had survived anyway, as people do, and in surviving she had gone quiet in ways she had not fully reckoned with until tonight. She was listening now. She was listening, and what she heard was not a grand plan revealed, not a suffering explained, not a future outlined in sufficient detail to feel secure. What she heard was simpler than all of those things, and also heavier with meaning than any of them. She was known completely, in the way that nothing is hidden and nothing is softened and nothing needs to be performed or managed or held together for the sake of appearance. She was known in the way you can only be known by something that has been with you in all of it. In the bathroom in February, and the phone call in May, and the 14 months of bird feeders and cold coffee and Sunday afternoons that lasted too long and nights that lasted longer. Known and not set aside because of what the knowing revealed. Known and loved in the knowing. She sat with that. The clock moved to 12:53. At some point in the last hour, the tension she had been carrying in her shoulders, the tension she had stopped noticing because it had been there so long it felt like her natural posture had released. She noticed its absence now, the way you notice a sound has stopped. She sat differently than she had sat for months. Slightly less braced, slightly less arranged against something. She thought about Thomas. He would call on Sunday. He always called on Sunday. And she would answer and say she was fine. And he would be relieved, and they would talk for 20 minutes, and hang up, and each of them would feel the inadequacy of 20 minutes without knowing how to say so. That pattern would probably continue. She was not expecting Sunday to feel different than the Sundays before it, but she thought that perhaps she would tell him something true. Not everything. She was not going to try to explain this kitchen and this midnight and this voice that was not quite a voice, and the way the knot in her chest had loosened through the night. Thomas was a practical man, and she loved him for it, and she was not going to hand him something he did not have the tools for, but something true. Something small, something that said, I am here, and I am not only here in the way that means I have not died yet. Here in the fuller sense, present, attending, willing. She thought he would be glad to hear it. She thought it might be one of the things she was still here to give him. The book was under her hands. She looked at it for a long time. Then, slowly, she opened it to the first page. Harold's handwriting was there, exactly as she had known it would be. Careful and unhurried, slanting slightly to the right the way it always had. Blue ink faded now from 39 years, but still entirely legible because Harold had pressed firmly when he wrote, as though he wanted the words to last. For Miriam, who already knows how to listen. She just sometimes forgets. She read it 3 times. The 3rd time she smiled. It was a small smile. The kind that cost something. The kind that comes from a place deeper than the easy surface smiles she had been producing for 14 months for the benefit of people who needed to see her managing well. This one came from somewhere else. Somewhere that had been very quiet for a very long time and was now, tentatively, beginning to be less quiet. Harold had known her. He had known her in that way too. The way of being completely seen and loved in the sea. And he was gone. And she missed him with a completeness that would never become smaller, only more familiar. She understood that now, the grief was not going to resolve into something clean and finished. It was going to become part of her, woven into the texture of who she was, and she was going to carry it forward not as a weight that impeded her, but as proof of how much had been real. The love had been real. That did not end. Love does not stop when the person does. You know that, Miriam. You have always known that. She closed the book gently. She did not need to read it tonight. She just needed to open it. She just needed to do the small thing that proved she was still capable of the small things that mattered. She stood up from the table. Her back ached after all, the way it always did when she had been sitting too long. She pressed one hand to the small of it and stood for a moment, letting her body remember itself. She picked up the cold coffee cup and carried it to the sink, poured it out. The sound of it going down the drain was ordinary and complete. She rinsed the cup. She set it in the drying rack. She turned toward the light switch by the door. Her hand found it the way her hands found everything in this kitchen, without needing to look, from 41 years of knowing exactly where everything was. She paused. The light was on. She thought about what it meant that the light had been on all night. She had not turned it on deliberately. She never left the kitchen light on, but it had been on when she sat down, and it had stayed on through everything that had happened in this kitchen tonight. And she had not once thought to turn it off. She left it on. She did not decide this in any ceremonial way. She simply took her hand off the switch and stood there for a moment, and then turned and walked toward the hallway. Behind her, the kitchen held its light, steady and warm, falling across the table where the Bible sat closed, and the coffee cup was gone, and the chair was pushed slightly out from where she had been sitting. The way chairs look when someone has just risen from them. Evidence of a presence, evidence of a person, evidence of a life still being lived in this house. She walked down the hallway. She passed the photographs on the wall that she had not been able to look at directly for months. All those years of their life together captured in moments she used to walk past without really seeing because they were just always there. And now they were charged with everything. She did not stop, but she did not look away either. She let her eyes pass across them the way you let light pass across your face. Not reaching for it, not avoiding it, just letting it be what it was. Harold at 43, squinting into the sun at the lake where they used to vacation. Harold and her at Thomas's graduation, him with his arm around her. Both of them looking at something outside the frame of the photograph. Something that had made them both laugh at the exact moment the shutter opened. She did not know what that something had been. She had forgotten. She found, to her surprise, that she could live with having forgotten, that not all of it needed to be preserved in perfect detail, that the love itself was intact even when the specifics went soft at the edges. That memory was not the same as love, and love was not dependent on memory. She reached the bedroom door. She stood in it for a moment, looking at the room that had been the hardest room for 14 months. The room where the other side of the bed was wrong every morning. The room where the silence was its most specific and its most pointed. She went in. She pulled back the covers on her side. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the window, where the curtains were pale in the darkness, the faintest suggestion of the world outside still existing, still going on, still full of the ordinary movements of a life continuing. She was not at peace. She wanted to be clear about that, even to herself. She was not fixed. She was not healed in the way the word healing implied a return to the condition before the wound. She was not going to wake up tomorrow morning without the weight of missing Harold. She was not going to walk into the kitchen and find it easy. But something had changed tonight. Something structural, something below the feelings that would come and go as feelings always did. She had been heard. She had been known. She had been told in the register she was finally quiet enough to receive that she was not a remainder, not a leftover, not the quiet, trailing end of something that already finished. She was here, present tense, still a part of something that was not over. She lay down. She pulled the blanket up the way she always did, tucking it slightly at her shoulder, the small habit of a lifetime. She looked at the ceiling, in the kitchen down the hall. The light was still on. She had left it on deliberately this time. She was not entirely sure what she meant by it, but it felt true. It felt like the right thing. A light on in a house where someone lived, a signal to no one in particular, and also to everything that mattered. Someone is here. The night is not empty. The house is not abandoned. I am here. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in 14 months, she did not brace herself against the silence. She let it be what it was. And what it was, she found, was not empty at all. It was full of the voice that had been speaking in low registers all this time while she was not listening, full of a Thursday phone call, and 2 words in a bathroom and a man's handwriting that still leaned slightly to the right, full of a life that was not over, full of years ahead. She breathed in. She breathed out. Down the hall, the kitchen light held steady, and Miriam slept.